Hi guys. Oh my god. I love all these questions that are coming. Are you ready? I'm going to need specs to read this, no? Hi. How are you all? How are you all? How excited are you all? I'm very excited about this. I wish Maya comes on. Okay. So I know I am. That's right. Hi. How are you?
I'm doing so well. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here. How are
Oh
you?
my God, I'm so excited. But do you think I need to change this angle a bit? Because
Oh, yeah,
is this going to be better? Let me try it this way.
that's much better.
I think I'm going to master the pandemic situation. I'm going to master technology by the end of this pandemic.
That's
I
perfect.
hope there is an end to it. Is this okay?
That's great.
Yeah. How are you, Maya? So good to see you.
It's so good to see you. I've been
I
so,
have to tell you, I feel like I know you. Okay.
well, I've been so moved by seeing the comments and questions from the readers and the
We have
readers.
readers who are saying, thank you, my neck feels much better now. Guys, I'm sorry, but technology is a bit of an issue. And now I have the phone toppling over constantly. I'm going to try this. Damn, I should have thought of this earlier. Oopsie. Let me try. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get there.
You're going to get it,
Believe
and
I'm doing all this.
you managed to make it look graceful and beautiful somehow, so don't worry.
Oh, is this okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Done. Maya, let's start again. Sorry about this bit of a faux pas with my technology, but I'm so excited that we are talking. I loved the book. And it's a very, very personal book. And I don't know how you put this out there, but I have so many questions for you. Um, it's almost poetic at times, and it flows so beautifully. And I have the book with me, and I have certain pages which are marked, and which I want to, as we speak, I want to go into certain parts and ask you about it. um, but as you can see, the readers are very, very excited about this book also. The first question I want to ask you is that such a personal book, what made you write it?
So it's funny, I never anticipated writing a memoir. I think of myself as a fiction writer. I've always read novels. I was in the middle of working on my second novel when my mother needed emergency help. And all of a sudden, my life changed overnight. It was not a situation or an arrangement she and I had ever discussed. As
Right.
you know, all of you in the book club from reading the book, I took her to that doctor's appointment, and the choices were either for her to be hospitalized, which I could not bear the thought of. And so I just blurted out, I'll bring her home with me. And suddenly
Yeah.
my life changed so quickly. I was taking care of my young daughter. As a coping mechanism, I started writing posts on social media.
Okay.
And that was not something I had thought that I would do, but your life, when it becomes this pressure cooker, you kind of need to lift the lid and let some of the steam escape. So I
Yep.
turned to social media. I started writing these posts that were more candid and quite revealing just about what my daily life had become. And those posts would give me 5 minutes where I could just let people in. And what was really stunning to me was how many people, including friends of mine, started sharing their own experiences with not just Alzheimer's, family members who have Alzheimer's or dementia, but caregiving, illness, what it means when you're in that. And that, I had thought that I was the only one dealing with it. You feel like you're the only one. And it was so revelatory to see so many people, and strangers started writing these things. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, there's so many of us.
Yeah.
And then an editor happened to reach out to my agent. Those Facebook posts I was writing were getting shared. An editor reached out to my agent and said, would she be interested in writing a memoir? I said, I don't think I could do that. I'm flattered, but no. And that same night I wrote, I think, 70 pages.
Wow. Wow.
So it was clear to me that there really was a story here, and my only in with it, my kind of way of saying, okay, I'm going to do this, was the thought of other people out there who might feel alone or feel isolated and need the solidarity of knowing that that so many of us share these feelings.
Absolutely. You're so right about it, because that's one thing that I've always tried to tell people, that as a patient, like when I was diagnosed with cancer, and I didn't know how to explain it earlier, and you've done it so well. And I always said that as a patient, I know I'm going through a lot, but I'm getting that attention because I'm the patient. But your caregivers who can't really, because for them it's like, I see that where my husband and my sister, who were my primary caregivers, were concerned. And I was like, my God, look at how much they're doing. And the fact that caregivers need counseling and caregivers need a support group was so obvious at that point of time, and we kind of just don't look at it, and we just kind of move on, and the attention is on the patient. But what you were going through was exactly that in a different way. What you said was, there's so many out there who are caregivers, and definitely that community is so important, because there's so much that you're going through, and it's not possible that there will not be flare-ups where you will feel like, why am I doing this, or why am I going through this, and why can't this person get it? And those frustrations were I could so identify with it without being the caregiver, because I had seen them go through it. And having said that, we all have parents who are reaching a certain age now, and you're looking at this, and this is I felt that I found this book because I was meant to find it with my relationship with my mother. I'm being as honest as I can be. She's going through Parkinson's, and I can see the difference. And I literally feel that I was meant to get this book. This book is a message from the universe to me, because this is what I'm going through. And suddenly I was like, yeah, there's so many things that are, your feelings, which you feel, no, I could not be feeling that. And, it's there in the book, and it just kind of makes you understand that, yes, this is happening. So somewhere it was so beautiful, the way you became the mother to your mother. And that is the way to look at it. And it was like one of those moments, aha, this is what it is. And, though I have written it in my earlier book, that life comes a full circle, and that you start turning the parents to your parents. But reading this book reminded me of that this is what is happening at this point. Pandemic, the illness, whatever that is happening, I need to be the mother. I should not be expecting her to be the mother at this point of time. So well, beautiful book.
First of all, I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm so sorry to hear that about your mother. And one thing I've heard from so many people is that even when, I've heard from people whose parents are not necessarily dealing with an illness, but maybe they have just become parents for the first time, and they look to their parents to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Where it's, I want you to be X. I want you to be who I've always thought you were. And I want you to do the following. And our parents sometimes surprise us by not complying with that role. And we start seeing different facets of them that can be quite startling. And it's hard to know what to do in those moments because there's this real disconcerting gap between who we want them to be or who we need them to be versus who they really are in such moments. And I think that is really just part of negotiating adulthood. But no,
Absolutely, because as you turn a mother, as a woman, your mother doesn't have to be unwell or going through something. There's so many aspects that suddenly you look at and you say that I took this so much for granted from my mother, and look at what it is, or my parents for that matter. There's so many things that you either take for granted, or so many things that you think were your fault, or so many things that you think, don't really understand. It starts falling into place. And growing up is never pain free, I feel. There's always some sort of a pain in growing up, and I would say it's good pain, if
yeah,
we
these are
can
the
call it
growing
that.
pains, right? Those
Yeah.
pains that we feel in our childhood. I've heard you talk about how you moved quite a bit when you were a child and you kept going to different schools.
Yes.
And so you felt whenever you would go to a new school that you would feel quite alone because you would join
Absolutely.
and there
Yeah.
would be these existing groups, but books provided you with
Yeah.
company. Yeah, so we all have different growing pains. For me, in my household, my father was sort of the obvious source of a lot of dysfunction and a lot of tension. And so, really, during my childhood, we all develop these coping mechanisms. And later
Absolutely.
you look back and you think, oh, that was I mean, children are so resourceful. Like the flowers in the sidewalk cracks that just find ways to grow and turn towards the light. So, what I did was I turned towards my mother and I just decided she was going to be the superhero magical parent because I had one obviously not great parent in my father. So I thought, okay, she is going to be my Wonder Woman.
Absolutely.
And what's remarkable, I think, is that as children, in many ways, she was a Wonder Woman and a superstar. And in other ways, there were times when, especially as a writer, it was easy for me to fill in the blanks and make her into this mythological,
Which was also a
pedestalized.
coping mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
part of adulthood is when life keeps moving forward, right? But you look in the rearview mirror and you look
Yeah.
back and you think, oh yeah, even though I'm in this present moment and even though I'm moving forward, I can look back at the past and recognize ways in which I misperceived her to my
Yeah.
benefit.
So there's one question that I have for all our, everybody who has joined us. There's something about what you talk about, like when your mother used to call you Mayudi, Shonudi, Ranudi. This is how it would be, because as a Maharashtrian, I get that, thing of it. And I don't know if I would have said it. Maybe I should try to say it the way your mom would have said it. I wouldn't know how to do that. But, we've all had these little words. And I want to know from from all of us, all of the people members who have joined us, that did you have those little things that your parents said or your mom said that was always a special thing, which always kind of got that smile on your face? And also, or did I find certain things I found a lot of connection with? Was it because I have Maharashtrian parents too, though they are over here, or is it something that all of you have been able to kind of identify with? This is a question that I have for you all, and I want you to kind of write into us and think about it and tell me, because a lot of times I felt when you said Aji and everything, I could feel that connection and I could see the mother, because there's some sort of a the straightness, the chin up is a very Maharashtrian woman thing also. Or is that what I think in my head and it's just a woman thing? I don't know. So that's something that I want to know from the members. Before I ask you questions, they have also some of The members have asked the question. Let me start with their questions. Dr. Manit wants to know how to overcome self-defeat, tags which we attach to ourselves for no rhyme or reason. I know that, you know, there's a lot that we will be talking about, but normally we take the questions in the end. But then what happens is a lot of times we finish talking about the questions. So I want to start with what the members are asking and kind of flow into the questions that I want to ask. So yeah, that self-defeat, that tag that, you know, we kind of, how do we overcome with that is what Dr. Manit Sandhu wants to know.
Yeah, so I think this is such a great question. Part of what fascinates me is the idea of the stories we tell ourselves. And often we're not conscious that we do this, right? We have some voice in our head that tells us, you are this sort of person. And these voices can be inherited and they get shaped in our childhood. So I think to stop and examine those stories we're carrying around is so crucial. For me, for example, one thing I had always thought of myself was that I was a bookworm and that I was completely unathletic. And I thought I was just not meant for sports or for fitness or for, you know, and that was just a message I had internalized.
Right.
And when my daughter was born, this is one of the things that I think is so great about parenthood, and it's why I actively push back against this idea of mothers as martyrs, because my daughter, for me, it's never that I do things despite her, it's that my best choices are because of her. So I think to look at your children and think, okay, if I'm defeated, to answer that question, if my narrative to myself is that I feel defeated, we don't want to pass that on to our kids. And so I think to use the idea of our children and what they are inheriting from us as a light to kind of illuminate a new path forward. You know, in my case, I thought, oh, I want my daughter to have a strong, fit, healthy mom. And that was what opened the door for me into becoming a competitive weightlifter, which is not something I ever thought I would be. But I wanted to genuinely model a love of health and fitness for her.
You're absolutely right. We need to kind of do certain things that you can't just keep telling the kids. You have to be the example. That means you have to do those things. And also what you've pointed out in the book, which as you become parent, when you keep thinking, oh, I'm going to teach my child this and I'm going to mold my child like that. And then suddenly you realize, oh my God, this is a fallacy. You are not molding or teaching beyond a point. It's you who is learning and who is evolving. And I felt that when I became a parent, it was a growth for me, and it was a growth for my soul, and I was evolving. And so definitely that I think we do become that saying when they say that when a child is born, a mother is born. And I think that's the way to take it, to take it, that when a child is born, is when a mother is born, and, you know, take it from there. So Dr. Sandhu, I hope you've got that answer. Disha Bhatt wants to know, which is your favorite classic novel? Come on, Disha. Right now we are on to this book, but yeah, quickly, little bit going off it a bit. But which is your favorite classic novel?
It's like trying to choose between children and say which is your favorite. You know, I have so many, but I will say Toni.
Sorry,
Morrison.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but your video disappeared.
Yeah, it's the most strange thing which never happens has happened, and that is the electricity in my entire area is gone completely.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
going to try and get another phone and put a light on me, and let's see if you can see me on this. Can I see? Try it with that. I'm going to. Can you? This has not happened. We've not lost electricity like that. The entire area has gone dark. How exciting! Shall I hold that?
Are you done?
No. I'm going to try holding. Can I take this phone? Is this okay?
Yeah.
I can't believe you're going through this. But
I know,
yeah,
I can't believe you just lost power. That's amazing.
Yeah, just completely dark. Crazy.
Actually, switch on the light on your phone.
So let me try how to. Can I switch this light on? I can't believe this. We're going through this on our live. Yeah. Let's see this. Does this work?
Yeah.
I think yes. Okay. Okay.
Listen,
We can go
this
through
is,
this.
and
Let's continue.
this is what the book is about, right? Is that when things suddenly happen and when you feel like you've been plunged into darkness, we all find our way to
Oh
keep
my
going.
God, I'm getting tech savvy. Thank you. It's nice to have a husband and son who are tech savvy and can help you out. But yeah, so yeah, I love that answer. Do I have your permission to use this answer when I'm asked this question next? Because people ask me this question all the time also, which is your favorite book? And it's very difficult to tell. I feel that it's the mood that you're in and what you're going through in life at that point of time. And that's the book that is close to you and special for you at that point of time. And that's why, anyway. So I have a couple of more questions, but before I go into that, can I, before the battery dries, let's get to the questions that I want to ask. I want to also show you that for once, I have done what I was always told never to do. This, can you see the dog here?
Oh, I love it. I do that too.
But since the e-books have started and I can't do that, suddenly what I was always told not to do, I just want to do that. And I feel like that feeling of the book comes in with those dog ears for me right now. But, there's this point where you say, by taking care of myself, I'm taking care of her. I don't want Zoe going through life thinking that I gave myself up for her. I don't want guilt to be her inheritance. That line, I don't want guilt to be her inheritance, was a hugely, it was a big line for me. It was a big moment for me in the book. And I get what you're talking about, where your relationship with your mother is concerned. But what I find very, very beautiful about the book and what I want to move towards is, there's an amazing amount of, if I can call it, for a lack of better word, feminism in this book, which, it just teaches us so many things that we never really think about. And not just for your daughter, but I realize as parents, there's so many times, and especially I find that a lot, if I can say that, in Indian parents, that there's guilt that you pass on as inheritance. And this is a cycle that needs to break, like right now. And that line was so strong. I really want to know more about this because this is so applicable right now.
Yes, so I'm deeply passionate about this subject. I hear from not only from daughters of Indian parents, children of Indian parents, but Asian parents. So many people grow up with this sense that their parents sacrificed for them.
Yeah.
And at awards ceremonies, you'll see an actor accept an award and the person always tears up and says, my mother gave up everything for me.
Yeah.
And in the moment, it can feel like this very touching moment. But when you become a parent, you think, wait a minute, I don't want my daughter to think I gave up everything for her. Like, she doesn't need to be walking through life thinking that. What I want her to think is that my mother was so happy. My mother paved a road for me and let me know that I should go after my dreams. I should never think I'm asking for too much from life. I want my daughter to live magnificently.
Absolutely.
And the idea that we can tell them that while sending them a different message, one thing you pick up on in parenting is that what you say to your children on some level really doesn't matter. It's how you act and what you show them in your choices. That's what they truly inherit.
Absolutely.
And, the other thing I would say is that whenever we are, on airplanes, there's that message, the safety message, which says, in the event of an emergency, put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yes.
And I always think for parents, that would be very difficult to do.
Yeah.
In that actual moment, would you be able to put your own oxygen mask on first? And for me, I think the goal is to think about putting my own oxygen mask on first, not only in an emergency, but every day. Yeah. Because when you do that, again, for Zoe, I would always want her to put her own oxygen mask on first. And if we want that for our children, we have to do it ourselves.
Absolutely. That line that, Zoe makes me want to be the best version of myself. That it isn't a sacrifice, it's inspiration. This, the positive idea, and how we don't really think of this. And it is such a huge thing, and it shapes every action that we take. The lights are back. Yeah. But every action that we take is so shaped by the guilt that we carry, and what we pass on. And there are so many times when I keep saying that this is not what I'm going to do. This is not what I want my child to know. But there are times when you just pass that on. So as you can see, it's marked and pinned up. And so, yeah, find yourself, gather yourself up before it is too late. You are at risk of getting buried. Maybe you're already feeling buried. This is the statement for new mothers. And, like when I had a child, my sister-in-law told me that, you know what? If you are not able to feed the child, and if it doesn't come normally, naturally, it's absolutely fine. Breastfeeding is not so easy. And I looked at her and I said, oh my God. And after I had my child, that lesson was such an important lesson, because the moment I couldn't, the first thing that happened is I'm doing something wrong. I'm not a good mother. What is happening to me? And then suddenly that voice of hers, and I said, no, it's fine. It happens to everyone. So this lesson for new mothers is definitely something I really want underlined. And, we need to gather ourselves first before it's too late, because we are at a risk of losing ourselves. And I really wish I had read this at that point of time. A beautiful line again. And so I also want to know that how was this, that period when you describe when you had your baby, and, this whole journey before you understood your mother? How long was that part, and how tough was it?
How long was the part between when Zoe was born and when...
And when you actually kind of understood that this is what is actually happening with my mother?
Oh, with her Alzheimer's.
Yes.
So that was it was a process. I wish I could point to one definitive moment. I didn't
want it as a definitive moment. What I'm trying to ask you is that how was this process, in the sense of long, definitely, but because you're so full with the child and you're so busy with the child to understand that, because even in the book, when I was that was something that I was going through. What was it that was exactly going through you? And when you realized that, did you feel that, oh, I didn't give enough attention to my mother? Was that guilt there, or was the guilt with the child? What was it?
Yeah, so I would say, there was this process where I kept thinking, I think it was a mix of things. I kept noticing these changes in her and thinking she's not being who I expect her to be. She's not being her usual self. I would sort of talk to my brother and say, have you noticed changes in Mom? It seems like she's, she quit her job. That seemed very surprising, because she had prided herself on her career as a physician. So it was like, oh my gosh, who is Mom without her job? Who is she without her work? Her work defined her. So there were sort of puzzling different behaviors, and it felt like she was just pivoting towards the next chapter of her life. She would describe it, because she was so chin up, strong, lion-hearted. She would never say, she would never admit to vulnerability. So she made it sound as though, I'm just turning towards retirement. So she always had an explanation.
How did this part change your relationship with your brother?
Oh, well.
What happened there?
Yeah, I will tell you, I shared an early draft of this book with Manish, and I was so scared. I was terrified of sharing it with him.
Yeah.
And there were so many things we had never discussed. We had never talked about our father and his behavior. We had never talked about really what I went through as a caregiver. So after he read the book, he called me and he said, and I said to him, listen, my relationship with you matters more to me than anything, it matters more than this book.
Yeah.
If there's something in it that you object to, I want to know. And Absolutely. He called me after reading it and he said, he said, first of all, I come across as a total jerk. I come across as so, and I said, no, you don't. And he said, yeah, I didn't really know what you were going through. And he said, you know, you made it seem not easy, but you made it seem like you were just doing it. And that, you know, there's that line in the book when I'm weightlifting and my trainer tells me too much strength
Oh my
can
God.
be a weakness.
Your Louisms.
The Lewisms, that's right.
Why, yeah. Yeah.
So I remember having this moment where, you know, I used to suffer from these terrible lower back issues. I thought my lower back was weak. It turned out my lower back was doing too much. This is true for most people with back issues. And you need other parts of the body to step up and help and give you a support system. And that's what, you don't need to do anything to the lower back. So I really used to be the lower back of the body. I mean, I think a lot of moms are the lower back of the body, where we are stretched too thin, we're doing too much, we're overcompensating, and we look at ourselves and think, why am I hurting? Why am I exhausted? Why am I stressed out? I must need to be stronger. But no, the point isn't to do more. The point isn't that you're weak. The point is that you're doing too much. And the other areas of the body have gotten so used to you doing too much that they kind of fall asleep.
So then did you make any changes after he read the book? Or is it as it is now? He was like, okay, or did you change anything?
I made a few changes. One thing was that I just said to him, you need to be the one to take mom to certain appointments.
Yeah.
You know, I just had very concrete things that I asked him to do that it had never occurred to me to explicitly ask about. And then the other big change since writing this book, some readers know about this because I've written about it in essay form, but the other big change in my life is that I'm no longer married to Noah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's been a great thing. We are terrific co-parents. And I will tell you, part of what I realized, and there have been readers who have reached out to me and who've said, God, you sound so alone in this book, and you mention your husband, but where is he in all of these scenes?
You know, that's the question that I was coming to next, and you know, you've just given me that answer, and I don't want to be personal about it, but I would really want to know, because you know, what was his reaction when he read the book?
Yeah, well, so I'll tell you, and just as like an update, you know, so Zoe said to me the other day, we were talking about the pandemic, and Zoe said to me, I feel so bad for kids who only have one house. She said, you know, I'm so glad I get to have, right? It's amazing how kids look at things.
It's amazing, yes.
And I was like, oh yeah, she was like, you know, some kids only look at like one kitchen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I get to go back and forth. So she, you know, half the time she's with Noah, half the time she's with me. We live close by. So
was the book one of the reasons, or was that made some sort of clarity came into the relationship when you wrote the book? Do you think that kind of brought that forward?
Yes. So basically what I describe in the book about my relationship with my mother, where I often gave her this, you know, I described her as this selfless, devoted mother, but it was because I wanted to see her that way.
Right.
Similarly, you know, so when I was writing the book, my editor said to me, you keep describing your husband as wonderful and caring, supportive. Can we have a scene with him where he is helping you? And can we have a scene where, so it's sort of like if you were to interview the lower back, right? When it's doing too much, it might say like, oh, the rest of my body is great.
Yeah.
So we sometimes see what we want to see. And I was doing exactly what I described with my mother. I was doing it with my spouse, where I wanted him to be this equal partner. But our patterns were just such that it was not an equal partnership. I wasn't getting the support that I wanted and needed. And, you know, I thought, okay, I can have one choice where I continue over the next several decades doing this, or I can make a different choice and tell, you know, and show myself that we're never stuck. We always hold the keys. And in that moment, as with when I put my mother in the assisted living facility, I was terrified. I was so scared to make a change in my life. And what I realized is that when we're terrified, we often, our minds fill in the blanks with apprehension. We go to worst case scenarios. We think, oh my God, if I leave my marriage, my children will be destroyed, right? Or if I put my mother in an assisted living facility, that goes against everything I've learned as the daughter of Indian parents. She'll be so much guilt, so much obligation.
We carry, this is what when you bring up our kids like that, this is what we all end up doing. We carry it into our other relationships also. It's not just about the mother and child. We obviously, that's what it was. We carried it into another relationship also. You know, I know it is a bit personal, but it would not be, when we're talking about really personal things here and relationships, your relationship with your father. Has there been any change in it? Do you think your father's read this book? What is there anything that it is a personal book, so I'm sorry, it's a personal question in that sense, but yeah, has there been any change in it? Have you reached out? Have you ever met him again? Where is he? What is happening?
And I don't mind the personal questions at all. So readers also, please feel free to chime in. So I haven't spoken to him since that episode when Zoe was, you know, an infant and he wanted to visit with his new fiance.
Right.
And for the first time in my life, I said no.
Yep.
I haven't heard, you know, I haven't interacted with him since. He did send me recently a really bizarre, I don't even know how to describe it. It was kind of a slideshow, I would say. And it started off with my author headshot, and it was almost his version of my memoir.
Oh.
And I think it was his attempt to tell the story of my life. It was fascinating and disturbing. Nothing in it was factually true. And what it made me think of, you know, I think he is someone who doesn't really want to think about reality and instead wants to kind of bend events to fit with what he would like to see, kind of in the way that dictators do. And so it was kind of, yeah, it was very strange. It was fascinating.
So obviously that means that in a way, if it could be possible, and if somebody could say that, I think it would be lovely if there was an intervention and maybe needs help, and you know, everybody can't really kind of express themselves the way they would want to. And again, like I keep saying, because you're talking about a lot of parenting in there, it's very interesting to just think about what was the parenting that your father went through, you know, where because this is so coming from the childhood is what I feel, and I could be wrong, but it does come from there. So when you went through this and when you've gone through all that you've gone through, do you now look at him with a little more, maybe forgiveness, maybe the right word, or maybe more understanding than before?
With both of my parents, I absolutely look at them with compassion and with just a different understanding of them as vulnerable, culpable people who had their own baggage, their own issues that they were carrying around. With someone like my father, I now am pretty sure that he probably suffered from something like narcissistic personality disorder.
Right.
And with a disorder like that, it's very hard to get help. You know, with depression, that's like trying to walk around with a broken bone.
Right.
That's like a fracture. So
Yeah.
hopefully, you're able to get help, get support. With something more ambiguous like a personality disorder, I'm sure it was influenced by his upbringing, which he had a lot of siblings. I'm sure he did not receive attention or love or care. And my mother as well, I recognized she was easily overwhelmed. I think that is part of why she did not get on the plane to be with me.
Yeah.
When I called her and begged her.
Yep.
And
Bookworm 2020 is asking, how different is the relationship you share with your daughter from the one you shared with your mom? I think what you're talking about just now, just understanding the fact that this is what is the baggage that our parents are carrying. And what I learned from the book is what I would like to share, and tell me if you want to add something to that, is the fact that understanding the fact that all of us are going to be carrying some baggage. And rather than pretending that, oh, I am the superwoman who doesn't have a baggage, rather than that, if you can let your child be aware that, you know what, I'm a human, I have my failures, and that's how I grow to be a superwoman. Because the fact is that I'm standing on the shoulder of all these problems, failures, or whatever you would like to call them. And that's what being honest and letting them know the reality and not just paint a pretty picture I would say, be the difference between what you are doing and your mother does, probably. Or what would you want to say to that?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. One thing that I love about Zoe is that she is always, even though she's 11 years old now. She's obviously grown since when I was writing the book. She's very candid with me and she's very open with me. And it's not that I'm ever talking with her in ways that are not age appropriate. You always have to know where your child is in time.
Mm-hmm.
But we have these conversations and I think to myself, God, my mother and I never would have talked this way.
Yeah.
And even little things like, the other day in school, she's starting the 6th grade now. She had to choose her foreign language.
Middle school.
Yeah. And, she was saying, oh, I'm kind of torn between French or Spanish. And I said to her, okay, well, don't think about what you want mom or dad for you to choose. Listen, really think about your gut and what feels right.
Right.
And she kind of looked at me. She knows that I speak French. And she said, oh, if I don't speak French, you're cool with, if I don't choose French, you're cool with that? Huh. And part of me so wanted her to take French, that we could have a little French adventure. And,
Yeah.
But I said, no. I always want you to tune into your gut. And I always want you to be loyal to that voice in your head that tells you what you want, and to never go with what you think I want for you.
That's very, very, very hard to do, but I mean, what you did is easier said than done. So what you've done is not so easy to do. I mean, I've struggled with that as a parent. There is a line in your chapter 43, which is, I don't know how to answer, so I follow the basic recipe for reassurance. A lie, followed by a platitude, followed by a lie. And, this line again is it's just, we all kind of are doing that. Why do we do that when we are trying to reassure a person? Why does it have to be a lie? But the fact of the matter is, Maya, that if you're telling the truth, it's not reassuring all the time. And sometimes you do need that reassurance. So what would you want to say about this? It's very real, and it's very something every one of us is going through in all sorts of relationships. It's not just with your parent or your spouse, any relationship, even with our friends, But the instinct is to reassure. Why does it always have to be a lie then to reassure?
Well, yeah, and I find this during the pandemic as well, that, our children will ask questions because of course they have questions, and not just our children, our friends will say to us, God, when do you think?
Yeah.
Right? And especially if that person, if you can tell that they are hurting and they are in discomfort, that desire to make them feel better can be so strong that you just want to say, it's going to be fine. It'll be over soon.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially with children, sometimes they need to be told, you know, just they need hope. So that's there. I think that there is a way to be honest without losing hope. And I think there's a way, and sometimes it just means saying, you know, I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I do know.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Right. And I think to say that to your children can be quite powerful, to admit, like, you know, I don't know. But what I do know is that we will get through it together and that we always make each other laugh. And I love
Well
celebrating
said.
with you. And, you know, so to turn to positive
Absolutely.
things while also acknowledge and being a little bit transparent. Because what I've also found, you know, say you do, to go back to what we were saying about depression, that it's like, you know, trying to walk around on a broken leg.
Yes.
If someone said to you, you'll be fine, it'll be over soon, that can be quite aggravating when you're in that moment. And instead,
Your description of that depression was so touching, and it is so, you know, just to understand what you said, it got me thinking, and I was thinking, look at the time we are in, and you know, I was just thinking that, do I know anybody in my vicinity who's actually going through this, and have I not understood it? And believe me, I could count 3-4 of my you know, my friends and my relatives, I mean relationships, in which I could point out and say that, have I misunderstood this and have I brushed past this? It got me thinking and saying that, you know, I need to identify who really needs me to be there, and am I just brushing past and not understanding? Because depression is so difficult to understand. There is no reason why you should be, but you are, and you can't deny that. And I also feel that, you know, I was mentioning this to my friend, that when I went through cancer, the physical aspect of it eventually has been something that you can work towards, this physicality to it that you can work towards and kind of say that, okay, this is my goal. But the mental aspect is so flimsy or whimsical, or something that you can't kind of, it's not tangible, maybe that it would be the word, that it's harder and it's so much more difficult to heal. And that's why I feel that even when we see all those messages that are coming in, and I want to thank you all for, you know, talking about my health and wishing me the luck. But yes, the physical aspect of the healing is there. It's going on very well, touch wood. But the mental aspect is not so simple and not so easy. And it is much more harder, I feel.
Yes. And I think when people, you know, so often with these situations, what we are desperate for is to have a script, right? Like we want to help the people in our lives, but we don't quite know what to say.
Yes.
And faced with that awkwardness, sometimes we don't touch on the thing that's most necessary to say. So whether it's, you know, when you're talking to someone who's dealing with cancer, you feel for them, you think to ask about the chemo, or you think to ask about the next treatment, because that is tangible. Absolutely. And that's logistical. But when you're really dealing with something like illness or caregiving, there are so many emotions. And part of, I think what's the hardest part is feeling as though you're on the other side of a wall. And what you want most is for someone to come to your side of the wall and just sit with you, not even to have answers or to reassure you, but just to witness you and be there with you. That gives you so much. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, my hope with...
This is something, what you've said just now is something we're all going to be aware of. And I think in the times that we are going through, what you're telling us is the most important thing at this point of time, because there's so much, this lockdown, pandemic, the situations that we are in, there's so much that's happening mentally. And, you know, what you've said is something, are the signs that we all definitely kind of need to look out for. Sharina says that she loved the book. And one thing that really stuck with her was that we mothers are not really mothers at all. We are daughters reaching into our past as a child and then being to our children what we never received.
Yeah.
And I agree with her. That line was so beautiful that, every time, and got me thinking again. Every time I think I'm being the mother, am I really being the mother, or am I just doing it because I wanted this done to me? And my child probably doesn't want me doing this. And this is something every mother, or I would say every parent, kind of really needs to sit up and think about. It definitely was a very important question. And believe me, I could think of at least 50 times that I did it. To be very brutally honest, I did it because I would have liked to have that done with me. Not because I was being a good mother, but just because I felt this is what would have been lovely if my mother would have done to me. And it was an eye-opener. I agree with Sharina, beautiful, beautiful part of the book, and really loved this in the book. Yeah.
Thank you. And that feeling, it still continues to be a struggle. Like, just because I wrote that line, to this day, when I brush Zoe's hair, I have to sometimes literally like force myself to not. I have this desperate urge to braid her hair. It sounds so silly, but I always want to say, are you sure you don't want to braid? She does not want her hair braided. And it's because so wanted someone to show me that care and attention when I was a girl. So yes, I often think we are best as parents when we are kind of detached and have a kind of distance where we can respect our children just for who they are and not feel so implicated in those moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully. Very, very, very well said. The way you wrote about the food coma, the vegging out, and the comedians, the way they talk about die of laughter, the part that you wrote about how we are actually kind of flirting with death, but it's because it's not that we want to be gone, we just want briefly for life to stop. And that line was a very thought-provoking line again, but when you take it with the pandemic that we are going through and what you're feeling right now, this is something, because this is a heartfelt book and this is something that you have gone through. Do you feel that you've got that pause now in this pandemic?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think the pandemic is almost the inverse of what I describe in that moment. I think when life is going full speed, 90 miles per hour, all we want in those times during normal life, all we would want was a pause.
A pause.
Right. So the other day when Zoe's school, she's doing hybrid school, she's in a couple of days a week in a very limited way with like a very small portion of the alphabet. They're being very careful. Anyway, I dropped her off at school and I thought, I can't believe I used to complain about drop off and pickup. Right?
Oh,
like,
yes.
I can't believe that I used to, during my day, be like, oh my God, it's time for pickup already. I have to rush out the door. So I think when life is going full speed, we desperately want the pause. And now that we're in the pause and it's become this very protracted pause, all that we want is normalcy, and all that we want is those things that we used to take for granted.
Yeah, yeah. So just to add to that, I would say that when we are rushing through it, we want the pause. Like we said, we just want life to stop for a little while. But if it genuinely and really stops for a long time, we want it to restart again. So it's about the balance, and what we need is the balance. And as soon as there is an imbalance, something that can be wonderful, like you said, your strength can be your weakness. It is about that. And I want to say that line that you said, we shouldn't ask so much of any one part. Too much strength can be its own weakness. I love your Louisms. They are so something that I think we should copy down and keep that up. You say this is legacy of myths. They set an impossible standard. They're alluring for precisely the same reason they're dangerous. They refuse to disclose details. Yet those details, so pesky to myths, are where life occurs. The details tell the true story. The myth is the story as it wishes it could be. Very, very well said. We all have myths in our life, and we all don't want to let go of these myths. When you've gone through this, that myth that you have let go of and kind of overcome, do you miss it?
Oh, what a good question. Yeah, I mean, the myth is so much more fun, right? I mean, the myth is lovely. So when Zoe asks me, like, Mommy, did you always know you wanted to be a writer? It's so tempting to say, yeah, I always knew. I always knew inside. And, um, I just had to make it happen. And it's much messier and it's uncomfortable.
But
And
as a parent, you do want to make things prettier and make a nice memory for the child. So how do you not have that myth going then? So how do you go with that then?
yeah, well, some part of it also is that I think our kids keep coming back to us and asking us questions. So the story can change over time. So there might be what we tell our kids when they're a certain age, and then when they're in college and they're like, God, I don't know what my major should be, or I don't know if I really want to be pre-med. It's then you can have more detailed conversations and say, actually, I was pre-med and I couldn't handle
Nice.
organic chemistry or whatever it is, and you can
Nice.
bear yourself in those moments when they need what they're really asking for is to know that
Beautiful.
they're not the only
Yep.
ones struggling.
Yep. Absolutely. So that story of the woman in the river, and the way you keep going back to it, and the way you've tied it in so beautifully through this. The best line I thought was, we must not judge the woman in the river. And I think that line is so wonderful and this is something that you, me, and all the women really, really need to kind of remember, especially today, and understand that we really need to stop judging that woman in the river, because all of us are that woman and all of us are making these decisions, and we don't know why that's happening and what is that woman actually going through when she makes that decision. So very, very beautifully put when you say that it seems the woman in the river can't choose correctly. Choosing herself, she faces judgment. Sacrificing herself, she faces it too. That is the real lesson of the story. A woman faces judgment no matter what she chooses. See, these are these little nuggets. That the feminism in your book is so wonderful and so real. And sometimes I don't even feel like, feminism, always when you say feminism, it feels like a fight, which it is not. It's just understanding. And a lot of times I feel that feminism for me is just understanding what my biases are, what my conditioning is, and trying to explain that, half the time, because we as women don't understand what is the conditioning we have gone through, and we are doing certain things that we are doing them because we are conditioned to do it. And the moment we can identify that and explain that, listen, I don't think I should be doing this, and we as women kind of help each other and stop judging each other, I think that will be a bigger step towards feminism than kind of just fighting it out and shouting it out. Any
That's
any
exactly
thoughts
right.
that you have on it?
Yes, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I think, first of all, that feminism for me is really about compassion.
Oh, lovely.
And I think that ultimately, when we judge other women in particular, the space we give other women, that's the space we give ourselves. So when I hear a woman judging another woman, I don't think about the woman being judged. I think about the person making the statements, because I think, God, poor you. Like, if you're judging her so harshly, I can only imagine how harshly you must judge yourself.
Yeah.
And
Very, very well said.
I think that especially during this pandemic, women in many households are carrying so much. They're often sacrificing themselves, putting themselves at the bottom of the totem pole because they want to tend to the emotional needs of their children. They want to tend to their spouses. They want to tend to their parents and relatives and friends, siblings. And I think to cheer other women on when they say, God, I just need a break.
Yeah.
Or when women reveal, God, I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm burning the candle at all ends. I think to
Yeah.
meet those moments of vulnerability with compassion and kindness and gentleness, I think you're right. I think that will accomplish more for women than any kind of, you know, militaristic, stringent approach.
Then you talk about your mother's memory, that it collects things on its, problem of my mom, a too sharp memory, it collects things on its points. Her illness offers a startling insight. I don't need to hold on to what my memory hoards. This isn't just for the first time. I think that the point of moving my mother in with me isn't just to help her. I might have something to gain as well. That insight is beautiful. And also the fact that when you say that, why are we holding on to and holding on to? And also what brought that out was that there's so many times that we are holding on to memories, be it not letting go of something that was hurtful, or, just letting go. I mean, when you realize how fragile it actually is and how free she is feeling when she's not really, like you describe it so beautifully. You say it's like having a glass of wine and you become a little more chilled out and a little bit relaxed and you open out a little more. And how wonderful it would be if you would just let go and, would be able to enjoy that moment a little more. It's so beautifully put. I mean, the chapters are small, but there's such amazing insights into this. I mean, there are times when I feel that, there's this book is something that for mental health you should kind of recommend, because there's so many of these nuggets which are amazing for your mental health, and it's beautiful the way you've done it. And I can't keep giving you enough compliments in that. You say, I am being to mom, she should have been, I'm doing some helping us both. So what do you mean by that? When you say that you're taking care of your mom, how are you helping yourself when you take care of your mom? That thought, what was the thought behind that?
So I think parenthood and caregiving are really a kind of chance to atone. And
atone.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think suddenly we think about in new ways what was and wasn't done for us. And I think, for me, when I was caring for my mother, I had these moments where I thought, when I really needed you, you weren't there for me. And I'm making a decision to be here for you, but I actually don't experience bitterness in this moment. What I feel is love and forgiveness and a kind of full circle.
You don't feel that maybe that was the only way she knew how to be there for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I've thought about, because obviously with a memoir like this, you keep thinking after it's written, right? You write it, but it opens a door.
Because the growth continues,
That's right. So one thing that I have been thinking about a lot, and I imagine this might be true for many Indian households. In my household, my mother's way of expressing love was really kind of medical or illness oriented. So she was so busy, but if I was sick, she would often drop everything for me to take me to the doctor, and I could see her physician's wheels turning where she wanted to put me on antibiotics right away, by the cold. So I think often for Indian parents, the way of expressing warmth or love or care is through let's put you on erythromycin, or
you're taking care of your physical health,
right?
Because I don't think we're just about kind of beginning to understand that mental health is what kind of makes that physical health happen. And I think in the world, till we don't kind of identify and take that as the most important lesson, we are going to be going through a lot of issues and a lot of problems. And I think that's what this book is saying. I think before we go to anywhere else, I think one more Louism, be gentle, go easy on yourself. Health is more important than fitness. I think is something that we should all remember and kind of keep with us and go with this, because when we talk about health, it's more the mental health. And, we really need to kind of with reading, or when I read this book, that, and because this is the time we are going through, that is something that has come back so strongly to me, about how are we actually dealing with what we go through mentally, and how we don't even think it's an issue or think it's a problem, while that is the conversation that we should be having. So your book really starts off a fabulous conversation, because it got me thinking, it got me having a conversation with myself, it got me asking a lot of questions. And that's what a wonderful author does and a wonderful book does. It gets you asking questions. So
Thank
Maya,
you.
what next after this?
Well, I do want to, first of all, thank you so much. It means so much to hear all of that to me. It really personally means a lot. I also just want to say, for people who are listening during this pandemic, I can't stress enough, I think, the importance of being gentle with ourselves and with one another. Compassion is my favorite quality, and I think right now we need it more than ever. Kindness and compassion, not just towards others, but towards ourselves. And the other thing I want to say is that so often in life, I think especially as Indian people, but everyone does this, we value the highlight reel of life, or we value the gem on the other side, but we don't think about the evolutionary process to get us there, and how that process can be difficult and painful and hard. So, if you were to like interview the oyster when it's making the pearl, the oyster would not be happy. And if you gave the oyster the chance to give up, it would. What the oyster is doing is contorting very uncomfortably around that piece of grit that has gotten inside. And you don't get the pearl without going through that difficulty and grappling with it and feeling uncomfortable. So I think whenever we're feeling that way in crisis, when we feel like I can't do this, this is hard, I think to say to yourself, of course it's hard. Of course this is hard. We're in a pandemic, or we're dealing with illness, or, of course it's hard, and that's okay. And this will get me to a place where I am the next version of myself. And getting there is just going to feel this way.
So what's next?
What's next? I've been thinking a lot about the idea of joy.
Oh, lovely.
And for women especially, the concept of pursuing joy as an active choice. For me, growing up, I always thought joy was something that you stumbled upon if you were lucky, kind of like a dollar bill on the street. And now I've been thinking, no, joy is a choice, or
it's cultivated.
Choice. Yeah. And it's not always easy. That's what's so funny. I mean, I think especially if you grew up in a household where, for me at least, my household didn't have a lot of joy. My parents didn't have a lot of affection for each other or for us. There wasn't a lot of laughter in my household. So the idea of, okay, how do I seek out joy? And that's going to involve choices that go against my conditioning and against what I've inherited.
Very hard.
It's very hard. That's what's so funny. Joy sounds fabulous, but dedicating yourself to really testing the ceiling and saying, well, how much can I really push this? And how much can I really ask for? And sometimes that means risk over safety and difficult choices. But I want to really think about that and really kind of be.
So what I can say to that is that it took nearly dying for me to realize how important joyfulness was, because we kind of keep, I kept confusing being happy with joyful, but it is different. And like I said, it's something that needs to be cultivated. It's not something that it's very hard. And also the other thing that I realize is that how easy it is to fall back into patterns, and kind of the clarity that I had when you think this is it, you have a limited amount of time, there's immense amount of clarity, and suddenly it's just so clear. But the moment, you know, that's human mind and the way we kind of put the trauma away. And as I put the trauma away, there are times when I tell myself, I don't want to forget the trauma completely, because I'm missing that clarity and I'm falling into old patterns where I keep missing that clarity. And I would love to read this book, because joyfulness is what I am desperately looking for, and trying to identify in every aspect of my life, be it personal, professional, whatever it is, you know, just finding that. And sounds very easy, but it's hard, and it's not going to be an easy job, but I'm sure you're going to give us a great perspective on it, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, I'm so happy to have a fellow, you know, joy explorer and someone who understands that it is a process and a difficult one. And I think you're exactly right that part of that process involves actually giving our traumatic experiences a seat at the table instead of saying, oh, that's behind me. I don't need to think about that anymore. No, I mean, I think that trauma opens a window and often lets in necessary light. And to say, oh, I want to keep thinking about that light. I want to keep thinking about that window, because that window is going to help me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's very easy. I mean, it would be easier to say that, you know what, forget this trauma. But then I would forget that aspect of it also. So yeah, I've never been able to express it that way. And I'm sure the way you will put it, I'm looking forward to some quotes from your new book to come, which I can use to express what I'm feeling. So thank you so much, Maya. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I want to tell all our viewers also, thank you so much. You've been writing in with all my camera being at the wrong angle, lights going off, with everything. I'm taking away a lot from this session, and I hope you are too. And write into us. Remember what I asked you, is it the Maharashtrian mother that I can identify, or can all of us identify that that parent or that mother? So Maya, thank you so much, and we wish you all the best, and just wishing you joyfulness in your life.
Likewise, Sonali, and what a joy this was for me. I will remember that I got to do this 20 years from now. I'll think, oh my God, I got to talk to Sonali. That was amazing. So thank you.
I hope we catch up and we meet, and this pandemic ends and we see each other, and I'm hoping that we meet each other face to face also. So all the best for your future.
All the best.
Lots of love to your baby, and yes, have a great life.
Likewise, and we will meet up, and
yes.
my joy to you as well.
Thank you so much. Bye guys, bye. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed what we've had, the conversation that we've had. And if I have missed out on any question with all this tech problems happening, just write in again and we will address those, and it's not a problem at all. So thank you so much for joining in. And I promise you more Insta Lives coming up, because I think I've missed it also. So I will do more of this. Thank you so much. Bye. Run.